Welcome to Leadership Moments.
In every great leader's life, there are pivotal moments that shape their character, test their resilience, and awaken their vision.
Together, we'll uncover the invaluable lessons hidden within these transformative moments. Today, our guest is Phil Bertolini. Phil is a Senior Vice President for Government Technology, the premier event and thought leadership content provider for state and local government technology professionals. Previously, he served as Deputy County Executive and CIO for Oakland County, Michigan. During his 31-year tenure, Phil built a world-class IT organization in the second largest county in Michigan, just north of Detroit. In 2005, he was promoted to Deputy County Executive, holding dual positions until his retirement. Phil's efforts earned the county national attention, winning numerous awards for technology innovation and excellence. He was named Governing Magazine's Public Official of the Year and Government Technology Magazine's Top 25 Doers, Dreamers, and Divers. He was also honored by the President Obama White House as a champion of change. Today, we are going to talk about trusting your intuition and finding a balance in all aspects of your career and how it is vital to moving forward. Let's dig in. Hi, Phil. Thank you so much for being on our show today. I am excited for you to share your story and things that you have done in your leadership career. Can you start off with telling us a time that was, pivotal in your career and how you navigated through that?
Stacy, it's awesome to be with you this morning, and there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to a leadership career, and there has been a lot of things that happened, but one thing sticks out in my mind more than anything, and I was, you know what a property tax assessor is, I'm sure, because you own a home, and you know how much fun those people are. Well, I was one of those people, and I used to assess people's property for taxation, and it was not a fun thing, right? People didn't like us. They didn't, invite us in. Well, especially didn't invite us in, but they didn't send us Christmas cards or anything like that. Well, that's what I did. I ran the equalization division for Oakland County, which was the property tax assessors area. Well, I had been doing a number of things with technology and getting ready for, a heavy presence of technology in our world. And I was driving to Lansing because I was on the board for the Michigan Assessors Association. And I drove all the way to Lansing, and I get there and I get this call. And the call comes from an amazing person, Dee, who has since passed away. And she was L. Brooks Patterson's administrative person. And she said, Phil, you should come back to the county. Brooks wants to see you. I was like, okay, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because L. Brooks Patterson was the county executive at the time. And she said, it's a good thing. So I began to drive back. So I got right back in my car again. I had just gotten there, drove back to Oakland County. And as I'm driving back, I called my wife on the phone. I said, I'm going back. I've been requested to come back and see Mr. Patterson. What do you think? This could be really interesting. There were 2 jobs open at the time, 2 director positions. And I thought, maybe I'm in line for one of those. How cool could that be? But at the time, I was in what's called the merit system of Oakland County. So the merit system it's not civil service, but it had protections, right? You had a lot of steps you had to go through before they got rid of you. And this would be an appointed position where you serve at the pleasure of the county executive. In other words, he could say tomorrow, it was nice working with you, and out you go. And so I said to her, well, this is an appointed position. If he offers me one of these things, what do you think? Now, I can't tell you exactly what she said because this is a family-friendly podcast, but I think it was a interesting version of, are you crazy? Right. And so I said, that's all I needed to hear. So I hung up with her and I drove to Oakland County, and I get there and I walk in and there's Brooks sitting at his desk, and I sit down. He goes, all right, Phil, he goes, there's so much going on in the county today. I need someone to lead our technology arm. So I want to make you the director of information technology. And I said, well, and me, you know me, Stacy, I'm ultimately brutally open and transparent. I said, well, Brooks, I'm very honored. So you know that I'm not a technology person. I mean, I took Waterloo Basic in college. That was the extent of my technology, but I had been working technology projects up to that point. I said, I'm not a technology person. Now, this was December of 2000. And I remember him saying this, and this was a bit, a different philosophy at the time, if you think about what was going on in 2000 in the world. And he said, Phil, if I needed a technology person to run technology, I have a whole building full of those people, because I need someone that's going to get people to use the technologies we built for them. And I thought, okay, he's looking for someone that can go into an organization, affect change, and use technology as a tool to do that. And he goes, so I want you to be my director of IT. So my first response was, okay, I'll take it. And here's his words. He goes, well, you might want to go home and talk to your wife first. I said, Brooks, we've already had that conversation. And it was years later that he and I actually went through and talked about what my wife's actually said in the car. And so at that point in time, I took the position of director of information technology. And, it was a big change for me. It was, coming out of the assessing world where I really knew my stuff. I was certified at a level 4 assessor, so state that's as high as you can go. So, I knew that job really well. Now I was going to go into a job that I didn't know very well, right? But I got a chance to create it. I got a chance to morph the position and actually do some incredible things. And I will say, Stacy, for the first 6 months of my job as the IT director, my head was swimming. There was so many things that I had to learn and so many issues that I had to get my arms around. There was so many people I had to get to know that it was tough. And then, of course, we know what happened in September of 2001, which was 9/11. So that was in my first year. So all this stuff was stacking up, but it was the best decision I ever made in my career. I took that leap of faith. You knew L. Brooks Patterson. He was an incredible guy to work with. And I worked with him for almost 20 years in charge of IT and became the CIO and deputy county executive. None of that would have happened. And I wouldn't be sitting where I am today if I hadn't done that. If I hadn't made that decision right away in December of 2000, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. And quite honestly, you and I would have not met, and I would not have been in the mentoring program that we were both part of. So that was a big decision and a very pivotal time in my career.
Yeah, that's such a great story. So many things. So for those that are not aware, like you had over an hour drive back to think about this. It sounds like your wife gave you some confidence or at least assurance that it was good.
Well, I knew I was going the right direction because that's where I was leading, but she kind of cemented it with her comments. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then going from a secure job to maybe a not secure job, and in a different field, right? Completely different. And I love how you ask questions, and you're so right. Brooks was a great individual, for those that may have known him. When you think about how vital it is to be adaptable as a leader, what are some practical ways that you would maybe have for our listeners, as leaders, and how they can embrace change and uncertainty for situations like this?
That's an excellent question, Stacy, because what we're seeing out in the world today with what I do today, so I'm the Senior Vice President of Events for eRepublic or Government Technology, and I'm going state by state, right? So I'm talking to tech leaders across the country in the government space and the higher ed and K-12, the public sector for the most part. And what I'm seeing is it's a pitched battle for change. Change is happening around them. There's almost no way to avoid it. So one of the things you have to do is be able to accept it. The first thing is you just have to be able to accept it. Things are going to change. I always remember the story of the frontier people and the settlers, and I won't take credit for it. As a good friend of mine, Scott Ottman, who used to share this with me. The frontier people go out and they find new things, right? They find new things. And then they come back and they drop them on the table and say, this is a great new thing. And then the settlers all look at it and go, okay, how's it going to work in my infrastructure? Is there a licensing issue? Does it integrate with everything else? By the way, the frontier people are gone already, right? So what they've done is abandon ship because they're out looking for the next new thing. That's going to constantly happen in a technology career, and really in most careers, it's going to constantly happen. So what you have to do is be able to accept that. And you have to just get your mind around the fact it's going to happen. Okay, so now the next thing you have to do is pull it apart. I'm one of those people that I'll pull the pieces apart and say, okay, here's the change I have to do. What are the 5 things I need to do to make that work? And can I pull those 5 things apart And then can I reassemble them into something that's going to make a big difference for us? Can I take these pieces that might be unknowns? Can I find out what I need to find out and go ahead and do it? Now, Stacy, and you know me, I'm one of those people, I'll make a quick decision. I'm a decision guy. So it's if you know, you'll come in, you'll be giving me like 30% of the downloaded data, and I'm making a decision in my head. And some people I know need the 100% plus, and they have to validate that. I'm not one of those people. So sometimes I make the wrong decision. I'll be open to say that. I've made some wrong decisions in my career. But in most cases, there's an intuition that comes along with change as well, is that you can see how change is going to impact the organization. And sometimes you just have to go for it. And sometimes you just have to say, you know what, this is going to be a tough one. And we may hit some bumps, and we may turn left when we're supposed to turn right, but at least let's go. And what comes to mind, Stacy, is when the cloud came in and software as a service. And if you remember, people perseverated over this. Is this going to lose jobs? I mean, is this going to impact this or that? Another thing, come to the realization it's the way to go for when you need to modernize your technologies, or the ability to to be able to work those technologies longer term and not have to constantly be in these update cycles. So we knew that we knew this was the right direction to go. We didn't have a lot of data back in 2010 to be able to make a move like that. So take today, artificial intelligence, and you look at what's going on with artificial intelligence and generative AI and what it's doing to our workplaces, what it's doing to our industries. We don't have the time we had with the cloud to be able to make those changes happen. So we have to embrace, and so the AI is here. It's been here, by the way, for a while. It's been part of a number of things, especially in cybersecurity. It's been here a long time. So we have to embrace it. We have to pull it apart and say, what are the practical uses, and what are the things I can do, and what are the wins I can do? And then we have to go. We have to go. We have to try it. We have to be smart on how we try it, because in the public sector, for sure, you have to be very ethical on how you handle all these things. I mean, most industries you do, but in the public sector, you're dealing with people's data, and you're dealing with, really serious services and concerns that people have. So using AI has to be very well thought out, and you almost have to do pieces and chunks of it to get where you need to go. But government can't wait like it waited for the cloud. And what's going to happen is you're going to have to go. So you have to embrace it, right? Pull it apart, put it back together, and go.
We talk about the cloud and how people were worried about their jobs, and that's how it is with AI. Like, there's always different technologies, but this one's moving faster. And I think that's what makes people a little more scared, for lack of a better word. You bring up a really good point about how you make decisions fast. And a lot of leaders struggle with that. What are some things that you do to help you move fast in those decisions? And you talk about intuition, but what are some things that you can give our leaders that they can maybe ask themselves to help them move forward faster?
Stacey, it's so interesting because everybody's different. And how much risk you're willing to absorb really comes into play. I mean, are you willing to get out on the limb? And one of my team members asked me recently, they said, Phil, give us your philosophy. I mean, what's really going on? Because I'm just, go, go, go. And I said, well, you've ever gone to a go-kart track where you're on the go-kart track and there's always that one guy that just pushes the gas pedal all the way down and bounces off the tires, and everybody else in the go-kart track, it just does it the whole way, right? That's me. So my struggle is I don't know how to let up. And that's a problem. That can be a problem, especially when you're dealing with things that are coming at you really fast, is that my gas pedal is always down, and I'm willing to bounce off the walls, and I'm willing to bump into people and bump into things. And I'm willing to do that. And I'm willing to accept that. And I'm also willing to accept the fallout of that, because, not everybody is excited about, you constantly bouncing off the walls and hitting into them. And when you do that in the organization, what happens is you stress the organization. So you have an organization that's moving along great, and then you start bumping into everybody, and it's like a bunch of atoms hitting each other, right? So then things have to change. Well, that's my style. So what happens though is I have to find those people that can go that way. And then I also have to know the people that can't. And I have to figure out how to manage and lead those people to be able to do that. So some leaders, they get caught into their own net. So what happens is you can overthink something too. You can overanalyze it. You can get so much information that you just information overload. And then sometimes the more information you have, the more difficult the decision is to make. So the question is, what is that risk tolerance and what level am I willing to accept it? And if I can understand that, and if I know that line, then I know that I have to get the information to get to that line before I can make a decision. Where in the process do I make a decision? The other struggle is some people make decisions before they get, like I said, make decisions early, like in your head, you've already made the decision. So the problem is the information you're getting after that may not get you there. Or what it's doing is it's confusing you. So you've made a decision, okay, I get it. All of a sudden more information comes and you go, wait a minute, it's not what I thought it was. Now I have to go back and I have to retrench and I have to relearn and I have to rethink. And then you get paralyzed, that old paralysis by analysis. And so you just have to take the leap at some point, but a logical, practical leap. No, I'm not just saying just jump off the high dive board and do a belly flop, right? I mean, I'm not saying do that. But what I am saying is that there are times when you have to make decisions, and your team will be happier if you make decisions sooner. Because what happens is they get snared into the net too. So they have something they're trying to move forward. They come to you with a problem and you're like, okay, I need to analyze this. And, hours go by, days go by, weeks go by. And they're like, I'm stalled. This problem has to get solved. So sometimes you just have to say, okay, solve the problem this way, and then we'll learn from it. And then the other part of this, Stacy, is the ability to fail. And this is something you and I have talked about a lot, is that, what's success and what's failure look like, and the ability to fail. And if you can allow your leaders to take those leaps of faith in some cases, right, or those fast moving decisions, and know that they're not going to get their neck chopped every time a failure happens, they're more likely to do it. They're more likely to engage, and they're more likely to make some of those decisions. And the other part is when we fail, we always tear a failure completely apart, right? We rip it apart. We find every line and say, okay, here's where it failed. I walked all the steps and here's where it failed. But we never do that with a success. We celebrate the success and we move on. But what we don't do is tear the success apart and find out what made it successful so we can replicate that. As a leader, if you can do those things, you can make the decisions you need to do and feel confident in it. And sometimes you just have to go.
You talk about doing the retrospectives in technology. We do a lot of retrospectives and, analyze what happened when systems fail but what about when that implementation went well? So you're so right on, you have to do the retrospective on failures and successes to say, okay, let's replicate that success again. How do we do that again? And part of that piece that I was hearing from you was, hey, I am going to fail. I might make mistake. I need to own my mistakes. We had an episode about owning your mistakes. How do you handle when you do make the wrong decision and still knowing that you have to move forward?
You learn a lot about a leader in the times of stress and crisis. When you make a decision and it doesn't go well, how you handle that determines the next time you're going to be able to make a decision. So to give you a really good example, a quick story. So at Oakland County, when I first got there, the process to enact payroll for the county was done. A fax would come over from payroll to IT, and that would trigger the bank transfer. So one day the fax didn't get there, and we didn't pay 5,000 people. We just didn't pay them. And a lot of people don't realize that when people don't get paid, when they're supposed to get paid, their bills get behind. There's some people live paycheck to paycheck. So then they come to my office, we didn't pay 5,000 people. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Now what do we do? So then I now have to go to my boss, the county executive, L. Brooks Patterson, to say, we didn't pay 5,000 people. So I walked in his office and I said, we got bad news for you. We didn't pay our employees this week. And his first response wasn't, who did what? Why did it happen? And that was not my first response either. It was like, what do we do to solve this? And his first response was, Phil, how do we get these people their money? He knew that people lived paycheck to paycheck, and some did. And so we devised a plan where we took $80,000 in cash and put it in a duffel bag. And I sat in the courthouse lobby for 24 hours and gave out payday loans. Now, the interesting part, which was the newspaper at the time, and I won't even name the newspaper, I don't know if they're still in existence, but the newspaper said Oakland County didn't pay its employees, right? The story gets out. and that the director of IT is sitting in the lobby of the courthouse with a bag of cash giving out payday loans. So now you see what the problem is. Now I have to have security. So I have sheriff's deputies and everything else. And we gave out payday loans. We gave out cash. And then they signed for them. And then we just took them out of the check when it finally was processed. All that stuff happened. But you learn a lot about a person in crisis. And that's not a huge crisis. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but for some people it could be. They could go and their bills could get behind, like I said, and that could be a problem. But you learn a lot about people. If you can solve the problem, find out what the problem is. The old incident management, problem management. The incident was people didn't get paid. So let's get them paid. Now, what was the problem? We had a fax. We had this antiquated process where a fax was coming across to trigger a payroll for our county employees. So we had to fix that to make sure it never happened again. But I learned a lot about him early on, is that it was always about the people. And I considered that a lesson for me, is that let's solve the incident. Let's get the people paid. If you have a tornado, let's get the people shelter. Let's make sure water is getting where it's supposed to be, right? Let's assess the damage. You only have 72 hours to assess damage after an incident. So you got to get out, you got to do this, and you got to get disaster declarations right. So what you do is you find people, and most leaders that are really good in a crisis, they actually get calmer, right? They don't get excited, because it totally gets the team all freaked out if you're yelling and screaming and you lose your mind. The best thing to do is get really calm and say, okay, what are the 5 things we need to do to solve this incident right now, and then we'll solve the problem. So the incident of, the issue of leadership and being able to make decisions and the ability to fail is all about how you're treated when you fail. And it's all about how you respond. Just like a cyber incident. I always think you're going to get hit. It's if, it's not, it's when, it's not if. So you're going to get hit. It's what you do after you get hit that is how you make your name, and how you instill confidence in the people around you.
Leaders can be great in calm times, but true leaders shine during the difficult times and working through that. Totally agree with staying calm and making sure, because if you stay calm, everyone else will stay calm, and focusing on the actual issue at hand. You kind of think of even like a 2-year-old running around with the tantrum. And the reason why they have tantrums is because they can't really speak. They don't have the vocabulary to express themselves. And we as adults need to remember to leverage how we can express ourselves and think through it methodically.
And Stacy, one thing to add there too is, you think about this too, is you have to lead by example. And I mean, that's an old, right? And I believe I wouldn't expect anybody to do anything I wouldn't do. So if I need to crawl in the mud, I'll crawl in the mud, right? If I have to do, you have to do what you have to do. And I remember one saying that a supervisor of mine said when I was in food service at Michigan State University. I was a student supervisor in the cafeteria. And I remember the one thing that they said to me, he said, if you have time enough to lean, you have time enough to clean. And so I had everybody walk in with a rag in their pocket, right? So if you were downtime, you just wipe a counter, right? Wipe a wall, do whatever you can do. Well, leaders, and then when times got tough and we got really super busy, everybody pulled together, because everybody knew that if you weren't just going to sit around and relax and not do what needed to be done. So I couldn't agree more, is that, the people that have to be the adults in the room, you have to be able to lead, and you have to be able to do it in such a way that the team follows, and the team will scatter potentially on you. So if things get too tough, some people can't handle that kind of stress. They do the same thing every day, right? You give them the spike in their work because of some sort of stressful, and they may not operate well, then your job is to make sure they do.
It brings me to a point of building trust within your team, building that camaraderie. When you're building trust, do you have any suggestions, that you haven't already mentioned about building that trust, maintaining morale for your team, especially when they're faced with adversity and these significant changes?
Well, you can't build trust during the adversity. And so just like when we prepare for cyber incidents, you can't build a relationship with a provider when the incident happens. You need to do all that pre-work. So to build trust, there's a ton of pre-work that has to happen. One, you have to actually ask their opinion and actually talk with them. A leader can't live in a perch and then just lead when they have to lead. You're always leading. When you walk in the door in the morning, if you're the first one there, you're leading. You're leading until you walk out that door. And sometimes your phone rings at 3 a.m. because there's a cyber incident, you're leading. So you're always leading no matter what. And they have to see that and they have to understand that. So you have to lead by, again, leading by example. But the other thing is, when you're asking their opinion, you actually have to listen to them. And this is hard for some people. And I don't take it lightly at all, is that some people already have their mind made up about what the world should be. And to get other people's opinions is a burden. And I will say at times, when I'm asking sometimes what we should do, I already have an idea of what we should do. I've already figured it out. In my head, I figured it out. But if you truly listen and you empower them to be part of that decision, you may find another way to get to the end that is better, more efficient, less costly, and then drives an important thing where you trust each other. Now, he actually listened to me. That's great. Now, not every idea is a good idea, though. So I will say sometimes you listen and it's like, no, that sounds interesting, but we're not doing that. I mean, sometimes that has to happen, but at least they had the opportunity. So building trust is important there. And then one last thing is, people are emotional in some way. They're they want to do well. They want to be fulfilled with what they do. You have to find a way to make sure that you're, evaluating people the right way, that you're working with them to be better at what they do. And the more you invest in people and the more you work on professional development, the more you work on skill set development, where maybe it's a skill set you don't need to send them to a class for a week to learn. Maybe it's something you can help them with as a skill set that you have that they don't necessarily have, that they can grow. You have to be willing to do that. And if you invest in them, it pays itself back. And one of the ways is that they trust you. Now, on the flip side of that, as a leader, you also make decisions that impact people's lives. And you do that on a daily basis. And that may end up where someone doesn't get the hours they need, or their project gets cut short, or something that you have to make a decision for the business that might be good for the overall, but it may not be good for an individual. That trust erodes like that. It's gone. It's gone. You could work for years to build trust, and you make one decision that they don't agree with, and you could lose that trust. That's okay. And I'm not saying it's good, but what I'm saying is it's okay, because you have to still make decisions, and not everybody's going to agree with your decisions. But if you make the right decision for the organization as a whole, maybe they'll see the light and they'll understand it. And if they don't, maybe there was not real trust there to begin with. And you learn as a leader, there are times when you think you have someone on board and all of a sudden they're not, and you just have to work through it. And it's not personal in many ways. The other thing about leadership is you can't take things personally. When you're new in leadership, you take things personally quite a bit. I mean, someone doesn't like your decision, you think you're a failure. So after a while, you're like, that's okay, thanks, but we're doing it anyway. And then you move on.
Yeah, that's a good point about taking things personally. That's very, very common. And you're right. You have to say, these are the facts. This is the why. And hopefully people get on board. But if they don't get on board, you have to remember that you're doing what you believe is best for the business and best for the team. So very, very good points. I do want to go back to a little bit. You talked about the frontiers and the settlers, and I love that. And one thing I believe, to be a great leader, you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to find the new ideas, the things that you need to do, but then make sure you actually follow through and bring it, across the finish line. How do you find that balance between being both of those roles?
So I'm going to challenge you on this, Stacy, because it's not in everybody's world to have both. And so can be a struggle, right? It's like that internal pitched battle you have with yourself. I really want to make everything work, but I need to find the new thing. You can also supplement those skills as a leader by surrounding yourself with the people that can go out and frontier. If you're not a good frontier person, if you're just good at keeping the railroad on time, then that's okay. Okay. But what you have to do is, when the frontier people come back, you can't fight them. And so the real struggle that settlers have is they fight the frontier people. And frontier people have that much patience with that. They have very little patience. So what happens is they drop this great idea, The settlers say no, because it doesn't work with what we have, or I assume it doesn't work with what we have. The frontier people now have a problem with that because they brought this really good idea. So having both skills, don't get me wrong, is great. And sometimes I find myself, you put the different hat on. You say, oh, this is really cool, really cool. Oh my God, what is it going to do to everything else? And so you'd have to think that way. But if you can supplement those skills to make sure you have your team built where you have some expert frontier people and expert settlers, and then you set the expectation with the both of them. Look, settler, when the frontier person walks in with the idea, the first word is not no. I never said no out of the gate to anything. I would say, all right, let's investigate it. And it depended on how much time we had, and let's investigate it and we'll see what we can do. And that was one of the greatest compliments my boss ever gave me in one of his speeches, one of the State of the Counties. He said, the word no is not in Phil's lexicon. Because if I say no over and over again, what happens is people will no longer bring me the ideas. So you actually shut the frontier people down and they become very disgruntled because they can never bring you anything new. Now, if you manage them the right way, if you let them hand it off, and then we have a room that has settlers and frontier people in the room saying, okay, we can do this with it. We can put it over here and we'll do this. And then maybe that gets us started and we can learn more about what this new technology does, and then maybe build it more into what we do over time. Then the frontier people are happy, like, okay, we did this. I wanted to do this, but we did this. Now I'm going to go out and find the next thing. Then they're free to go about their business. They don't have to think that they were shut down and that their ideas are not welcome. Now, the settlers on the other side too, the frontier people, you can only get mad at the settlers for so long because they hold the keys to everything. Because in the end, if you brought me 5 shadow IT systems and said we should make these work and 4 of them don't work, we're not doing them. Because we don't have the time to just do every new thing that comes along, right? It has to be meaningful. There has to be a business case behind it. There has to be other pieces and parts. So the frontier people can't just think they're going to drop their idea and we're going to do every one of them. My brother, who was business for many years, and he ran an innovation team out of the company he was CEO for, and he said that 75 to 80% of all their ideas never saw the light of day. Once they got vetted, that they were so far out of the realm of what they could do, he said, but it's the 15 to 20% or the 25% that did come in that made a difference to our business. So then the frontier person needs to understand that not all their ideas are going to become reality. So when they get to the settlers, they're not just all confused and mad. And the settlers have to not say no right away. They have to look at it. And then if there are business reasons why it's not going to work, then identify those business reasons for the frontier people so that they understand them, so they can go off and find the next new thing. So as a leader, having both would be great. But if you don't have it, then you make sure you supplement it with the right people around you.
All right, well, there's that sound. Now it's time to ask our fun questions. Are you ready for the fun questions?
Yes.
Right. What is your favorite hobby and how did you get into it?
Oh, I have a number of hobbies, but I will see, you can see in my background, for those that can see, though, I play a musical instrument, and I play the tuba. And I played in the Michigan State, well, I played all the way through school, and I played in the Michigan State marching band. And I play in 2 concert bands here in Southeast Michigan as well now, with the horn that's over this shoulder, that one there. This is the marching one for Michigan State. And it's actually a hobby of mine that I enjoy because it's got a number of different things. It satisfies my math brain, because music is full of math. So it satisfies the math and my brain wants to do all the time. Satisfies my creative side, so I can actually play, and we do concerts and performances. And for Michigan State, you're on the field with 600 performers playing at a halftime show, or you're playing at a basketball game. So it satisfies my creative side and my camaraderie side, because you're part of something. Then you're part of a team, a group that's going to provide this wonderful entertainment. But there's one more thing it provides, Stacy, and this is for leaders everywhere, is it provides the only time in my life where I have to shut everything else off. And this is the, my mind, and my wife can't stand it sometimes because I'm always thinking of what the next thing is, or the idea, or whatever it is. But when I play music, I have to fully concentrate on the music to be able to play it. And so I force myself to shut my phone off. I force myself to not be consumed with other things. And when I do that, it actually gives your mind a break. It gives your mind an intermission with all the things that you have to think about, family and work and all the pieces and parts. When you play music, that's the only thing you can think about at that point in time. So that's
Yeah,
my hobby. And
so
that's
good
what
to have that time to rest. So important. Yeah, and for those that are listening to the audio and wants to see the video, we do have that on youtube.com at Leadership Moments. You can see Phil's tubas in the back. Let's go on to the next question. So upon your death, two old friends are at a cafe on the street side of Paris and are reminiscing about your life. What would you like them to be talking about?
I love this question because there's so many things that go through my mind. So I'll just tell everybody, because I'm a little weird this way, but I've already planned that I'm going to do a video eulogy for myself, because I want people to say nice things about me. So if I do it myself, I know that's going to happen. Joking in a way, but it's kind of fun to think about. But also, what they will say and what I would like them to say could be a little different, right? Because when you're a leader and you go through your life, you're gonna stir the pot in a number of locations. So what you hope is that they're true friends that are sitting there, and that they're thinking about a number of things. One, they're talking about that when they called me, I was there. That when they needed me, I was there. And your true friends when they pick up the phone, that they would do anything, move heaven and earth to go ahead and help you do what you need to do. If your family's in crisis, they're there to try to help you through that crisis. And you just hope you have friends like that in your life, that that in a moment's notice, I could pick up a phone and they would ride with me and go do what I have to do. So you're hoping that they say that about me, that a friend called me in a time of need and I was there to help them, or I was there to listen, or I was there to help them through a problem or a crisis that they were able to get through. So I hope that. The next thing is, I work hard on empathy because it didn't come naturally to me. I'm just going to be honest. It was one of those things where I'm kind of like, let's get things done, and I'm not too worried about the wake of what I leave behind in some cases. So I have to be careful with that, and I work on that. What I hope is that they also say that I cared, that I cared about the world, and that I cared. And I spent 31 years in government for a reason. I mean, I had many opportunities to leave government, and I didn't until my boss passed away and our world kind of changed and flipped on a moment's notice. But I enjoyed helping people, and that's one thing you get out of public service. You're not going to get rich. You're going to get decent benefits. You're not going to get the benefits of the days of old of the government. But what I got to do every day is help people. If they called with a problem, we could help them. We could build technologies that would solve problems for people that might have health issues, or that might have homelessness, or whatever it may be. You just hope that you make a difference. And I want those two people sitting at that cafe after I pass away. Of course, I'm hoping. But if they do, is that I cared enough about people that I spent 31 years serving people every day, and I consider that the most rewarding times of my life, my professional life, has been able to serve people for 31 years.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So many good nuggets today, Phil. I can't thank you enough. I think if I had to summarize it in one word, I would say balance. Balance with, frontiers and settlers. But if you can't have that balance, then find someone that can. Balance with, making decisions and understanding, what other people's needs are, making sure that you're listening, but also making sure you're moving forward with those decisions. A lot of balance. And also, when you play music, and how you have the balance of having your own downtime and how you're always a leader. So lots of great nuggets. Thank you so much. If people wanted to reach out to you, where could they find you?
Well, I'm definitely on LinkedIn. So if people would like to link in with me, I'm out there. I'm on X. I have a hard time calling it that because the change has been tough for me, but I'm out there as well. But check in with me, and I'd love to have conversations, or to meet folks that are working on their leadership skills. And Stacy, if you think about it, one of the things that you and I did together that I cannot recommend more is mentoring and being part of mentoring programs. And that's that if you want to be rewarded, because we talked about work-life balance, we talked about all those things that you have to deal with, but the ability to mentor or be mentored or to mentor others is really where it all comes around. So, but yeah, if they want to reach out to me, I'm there.
Love that. Great. And yes, totally agree with giving back. For those that don't know, Phil was a mentor of mine many years ago and is still a mentor today for me. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Phil. I know that our listeners got a lot of great pieces today. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
And that concludes another episode of Leadership Moments. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights in what we shared today. Remember, leadership is not defined solely by titles or positions, but by the choices we make and the moments that shape us.
Embrace the challenges that come your way. They may be the very moments that propel you toward greatness. We'd love to hear your thoughts and stories as well. Connect with us on our website at leadershipmomentspodcast.com or through social media on Instagram at tap_be the game changer.
And Stacy Castor _. Remember, your leadership moment could be just around the corner, waiting for you to seize it. This is Stacy Castor, and what doesn't challenge you won't change you.
This is Tracy Ann Palmer, and be the change you wish to see in the world.